Welcome. Happy Saturday. This is Moving with Our Fascia, and this is, I think, going to be the last iteration. So if you haven't come to the others, no problem at all. If you have, we're going to go through some of the last lines that we'll cover. We've talked a lot about the postural lines, and now we're going to kind of go into a little bit more of the accessory lines. Still really helpful and good to know about. Before we jump into those though, quick recap of what fascia is. So fascia is super incredible and it is connective tissue, just all encompassing connective tissue. So if you think about all of your nerves, all of your vessels, all of your organs, they're all covered and encased in these sheaths of fascia. So everything that they're enclosed in, and that also includes the muscles and bones. And so really you can kind of see that everything in our body has fascia. What we're specifically working on here is more of the relationship of the bones and the muscles. So again, all of the bones, all of the muscles are covered in these, or encased in these sheaths of fascia. And then also they connect to each other. So bones connect to bones via ligaments. Those are a form of fascia. Muscles connect to bones via tendons. Those are also fascia. And then it's how they kind of integrate into the entire body. So you can think about some of these big places where you know that there's fascia, like your IT bands on the outside of your leg. You might roll those out. Those are huge parts of fascia on the body. There's also the plantar fascia on the bottom of the foot that connects the entire foot. But then even more important, it's how the big toe could relate all the way to the shoulder, or how the top of the scalp, which is another big sheath of fascia, could relate down to the knee. So really what this is that the fascia is an integration system in the body. It's what makes us a whole body that can connect and can move holistically. And so it's really incredible. And because of that, we always train our muscles. We always kind of take care of our bones, but we want to make sure that we're also taking care of our fascia since it is so important. Fascia is very different than muscles in the fact that, or in the sense that it's a lot more complicated to address because it's so kind of how do I describe this? Sorry. So the muscles, like, you know that you can work them out. And so they actually progress pretty fast. So when you're working out your muscles, you can usually kind of feel a difference in them in, a few weeks, a few months, but the fascia takes a lot longer. It takes about a year. So you want to make sure that you're kind of constantly working with that. And we know that some of the ways to work with it is like rolling out. You might do that on your own time. You might kind of take specialty classes for that. But then there's other ways as well. And we're going to kind of go through some of those for the specific lines that we're going to work on today. So before we begin, we're just going to start with a little brushing exercise to kind of feel the fascia or get a sense of it. So you can find a comfortable way of being. I like to do this standing. It makes me feel like I have a little bit more access to my entire body. You're just basically going to take a brushing motion and try to feel the entire body as you do that. And so kind of feeling how you could go all throughout the body, how you could make different patterns, how that could wrap around you, making sure you're getting like the face and the back of the neck, the bottoms of the feet, the tops of the feet. And again, kind of going through different patterns. And as you're doing this, knowing that you're probably touching different kind of discovered patterns of the body. So if you kind of go from your pinky finger and wrap it around to your hip, that's a specific part of the spiral line. Or same with if you just go down the front of your body, you're probably touching one of the front lines of the body. So just taking this time to kind of get a sense of the fact that when you touch each part of your body, you're feeling part of the fascia. You're feeling how you can integrate all the muscles together, all the bones together, so that your body can move functionally. All right, so taking just a couple more moments, make sure that you hit every part of the body that you can physically touch. And then you can kind of let that come to a close. So taking your hands, rub them together, and we're going to start by just touching the arms specifically. So feeling kind of the outside edge, how it goes into your back, maybe down your side a little bit. We'll go into the specifics of the muscle lines that we're going to be working with. But again, just kind of honing in on the arms for right now. So in the other fascial workshops, if you've been to them, we haven't really touched base very much with the arms. And the reason why is because the arms aren't a part of the axial skeleton. So if you're thinking about the axial skeleton, it's really kind of top to bottom. Your arms are a little bit separated from that. Because of that, they haven't been as integrated into the other lines of the body. They have some kind of integration, especially in like the spiral line, but they're a little bit more distant. And so the arms have their own lines. You can kind of bring that touching to a close if you want. We're going to go a little bit more specific. So the arm lines, even though they're a little bit separated from the axial skeleton, they're still integrated, they're still really important. And so there's 4 specific lines we're going to work on today, 4 specific arm lines. And so we're going to start with the deep front arm line. We're going to start palpating the bony landmarks that we can, the fascia that we can. Some of these are going to be too deep that we're not actually going to be able to access them. But as we're doing that, I'm going to actually pull the pictures so that you have a reference point as well. So give me one moment. All right, the screen that I'm sharing is going to be all the arm lines that we're talking about. So let me just make sure. All right. If for whatever reason this isn't showing up, you can let me know. But we're going to be starting with this deep front arm line. So where this starts is it starts at the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ribs. You can't really get in there very well, but it's kind of all the way in. And that's where it starts. And it leads up through your pec minor specifically. So the pec minor is going to be the deeper of the pecs. So it's kind of hard to feel, especially if you're a woman, but that's okay because you kind of know the sense. And let yourself just kind of feel that area, feel that diagonal reach that's heading in towards your arm. From there, it is going to go into the coracoid process. And the coracoid process is if you feel your clavicle, you feel your humerus, it's that kind of right end point where they kind of meet. So you can kind of feel that it's in the front of your shoulder. Maybe you found it, maybe you don't, but as long as you get the general sense of the area, kind of very front of the shoulder, it's going to be your coracoid process. So we're going to go head down. We're going to go through our fascial muscles and the fascial lines that we're working through, the softer tissue. It's going to be your biceps brachii. So your biceps, you know where they are, kind of feel them, give maybe a swiping motion, maybe press through until we land at our next bony landmark, which is going to be our radial tuberosity. So it's a little bit harder to feel again. So the radius is the bone that kind of runs from or on your thumb side, but it makes a diagonal. So if you can kind of feel that diagonal and then up at the top, you can kind of feel maybe that humor or that radial head and feeling that. And then around there is going to be the next part of the fascial line, and that's going to be the lateral collateral ligaments. We can't really touch that. It's a little too deep in there. But if you kind of give this wrapping sense, if you kind of give a little bit of a reach, you might be able to kind of sense where those ligaments might be. And then from there, it reaches down kind of through that radius. So if you kind of keep touching that bone, and then you come into your hand. And so we're going to be touching kind of specific carpal muscle or carpal bones, I'm sorry. And that's going to be your scaphoid and trapezium. So it doesn't matter that you might not be able to feel them specifically or know which ones they are specifically, but knowing that they are kind of right near your thumb. So if you go down into your hand and you kind of just like feel around towards the thumb side of your hand, that's where you're going to find in an anatomy book where you'd know that the scaphoid and trapezium are. And then that kind of brings you into touching these thick muscles of your thumb. So those are going to be your thenar muscles. Your thumb is referred to as a thenar. And so you can kind of just touch and press into them. They might be a little tight, feels good for me to press on them. And then the way that this muscle line, this fascial line ends is through the outside edge of your thumb. So just kind of feeling that. So not your entire thumb, it's very specific. It's the outside edge. So let's kind of go through that one more time, just kind of swiping through, feeling that line you just created. Knowing that this one's your deep one. So a lot of the things that we're touching right now are too deep to kind of really palpate. Next, we're going to be going into the superficial front line. All right. So superficial front line is the next one that we're looking at. You can kind of look at the image. They'll give you a little bit of an understanding. You can always, again, watch me as we go through this as well. So maybe take this one on your other side. So we're going to go onto I'm going to do it on my right hand. You don't have to switch if you don't want to, but it's an option. So this one is going to kind of come from the front and the back. So on the front side, it starts from the medial third of your clavicle. So medial is always further in, closer to center line. So medial third of your clavicle. So just kind of right by where your sternum is, feeling that bony landmark. And then it's also going to go through the costal cartilage of your like ribs and sternum area. So if you find your sternum, the costal cartilage is right next to it where the ribs kind of meet the sternum. So you can kind of feel that a little bit. And it's almost all the way, or it is all the way down kind of by your entire sternum. So again, that's the front bony landmarks. And then the back bony landmarks is a little bit bigger. So these are going to be your lower ribs. So if you kind of find your low ribs down here, the ones that are considered floating ribs that don't necessarily come all the way in, those ones. And then as well as kind of down your spine, the thoracolumbar fascia, that area. And then, sorry, I should turn around to kind of show this. And then all the way at this iliac crest. So the iliac crest is kind of the top of the pelvis. So you can kind of feel that whole area. Those are going to be your bony landmarks in the back. So we've got the bony landmarks in the front, the bony landmarks in the back. And then this is going to go through that big pec major muscle. So we kind of touched that, but we were touching deeper with that pec minor earlier. Now we're touching with that big pec major. And then also those big lats. So kind of the huge muscles in this area, those feed into the superficial front or arm line, front arm line. They come together and they meet at the medial humeral line. So in anatomical position, if your pinky finger is in, that's going to be anatomical position. Medial would be right about here. So it's where kind of these muscles integrate into the arm. So it's going to be kind of all the way in by your armpit. So you can kind of find your humerus in there. It's kind of a lot going on in that area, palpating it a little bit, finding that bone. So then this is going to kind of go down through that line. So it's not necessarily touching any muscles specifically. It's not like the pecs or lats. This one's kind of just following that line down until we meet the medial humeral epicondyle. So lots of words right there. Medial, again, inside edge. Epicondyle is going to be the very end of the humerus. And so just kind of finding that bony landmark. It's not quite as low as the elbow. It's a little bit further up, kind of above that elbow crease a little bit. So that's going to be your next bony landmark. It's going to then go through all of the flexor muscles of the forearm. So all of these muscles kind of on the inside edge of your forearm, those are kind of our fascia and our muscles that we're following into your carpal tunnel. which is going to be right here in that wrist. So feeling that. And then finally, this fascial line connects onto the flexor, the palmar side of your hand, of your fingers. So let's feel that again. So kind of finding that wrapping into your armpit, down through the kind of inside part of your arm and into the palm of your hand. So that's going to be your superficial front arm line. Wordy. All right, let's keep going. Let's go into the back lines. So we've got the deep back arm line first. So again, you can take a look at this picture. You can kind of get a sense of where this anatomy is going, where this line is going. And we'll take you through to feel kind of each of those moments. So the first moment is going to be the spinous processes of the cervical and upper thoracic vertebra. So that's going to be kind of up here, down into here, kind of the really bony part of the spine that you can feel pretty easily. And then it's also going to be the C1 through C4, so cervical 1 through cervical 4 vertebra, the transverse processes. So rather than these bony parts, it's going to be the kind of part out to the side. And so it's those two different bony landmarks that then will lead us through into a little bit of the musculature. So this one leads us through the rhomboids. So the kind of muscles that connect from the spine into the scapula, right in between the shoulder blades. You can kind of feel them if you move your shoulder blades a little bit. And then it's going to be your levator scapula, which is going to kind of go down your neck and into your scapula. So our next bony landmark is the medial border of our scapula. So you find your scapula, you find that inside edge. Again, it's pretty easy if you move your scapula around. It's going to be your next bony landmark. So after that, that feeds us through into our rotator cuff muscles. So the rotator cuff muscles completely surround the scapula. So they're both on top and underneath. Obviously, we can't feel underneath, but letting yourself kind of find and feel the muscles that lay on top and surround the scapula. That will lead us into our next bony landmark, which again, we can't really access, but it's the humeral head, the head of the humerus. So knowing that it's kind of inside, if you move your arm a little bit, you might be able to kind of sense where it is. But that's going to be our next bony landmark. This will lead us through our triceps. So again, those back arm muscles, we know them, we love them. And it will lead us into our olecranon process. Our olecranon process is what you typically think of as the elbow. So feeling that, that's your bony landmark. And then this is another kind of more ambiguous one where you're just going to kind of follow down through that ulnar side, that kind of pinky finger bone side of the forearm, which will lead us into the styloid process of the ulna. So if you look at your wrist, that kind of pointy bone right at the top of your wrist, that will be your styloid process of your ulna. These, again, the kind of fascia that we're feeling around here is the ulnar collateral ligaments. So it's kind of the connective ligaments around there, getting a sense of that. That leads into some more of those carpal bones. So this is going to lead into the triquetrum and the hamate. Again, we don't need to necessarily know exactly where they are, but knowing that they are kind of right by the pinky finger. That will lead us into those hypothenar muscles, which is going to be the pinky finger muscles. So similar to how there's specific muscles over here, there's specific muscles over here. Feeling those, and then just like that deep front arm line, it goes into the outside edge of the pinky to end. So again, let's kind of go through that. So finding that back space, reaching around, finding that pinky finger. If you take my classes, you kind of know I love this line. I use this line a lot. It helps me feel really integrated, helps me kind of deepen into the body. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't know about it yet, but we'll kind of discover it some more. All right, we've got one last line to go through for the superficial or for the arm lines. This one's going to be the superficial back arm line. So again, you can kind of see this on the image. We'll go through feeling it. I'm going to switch sides again. So this one's going to start at the occipital ridge. So if you find your skull, the very kind of base of it, you can kind of feel where that occipital ridge is. And then this one's also going to go into the spinous or the thoracic spinous processes. So rather than the cervical spinous processes, this is going to be a little bit lower. This is going to be that whole middle part of your spine and that really bony part that again sticks out. So those are your two starting bony landmarks. Both of those are going to lead into those really large trapezius muscle. So your traps, we usually think about them right on top of your shoulders. That's part of this. That's where it connects into this occipital ridge. But the traps actually make kind of a diamond down your back. So if you feel the spine, when you kind of go up into that area, you're touching those trapezius muscles down there as well. So knowing that that whole area, very large trapezius, is part of that superficial back line. From there, it's going to go into the spine of the scapula. So if you find your scapula again, you'll notice that there's kind of a ridge up towards the top, kind of opposite your clavicle. So feeling that, trying to find that, it's really what sticks out. That's not that medial border that you're probably used to feeling on the scapula. It also attaches into that acromion process, and that acromion process is kind of the end of the scapula where it about meets the humerus. So kind of finding that end point. Again, it might not be perfect where you're feeling, but finding a bony landmark that kind of feels like the end over there, probably reaching towards the acromion process. It's actually a little bit deeper. Can't really access it, but that's okay. And then from there, it goes into the deltoid. So the deltoid, big muscle on the top of your shoulder, feeling that, finding it, and then where that deltoid inserts, which is on the humerus at this deltoid tuberosity, a little bit more ambiguous of a place to feel on your body, but if you can kind of feel where that deltoid ends, and then finding the bone right there, you'll probably be in the general area of that. From there, you're going to keep going down. This is, again, just following that line until we hit that lateral epicondyle of the humerus. So we talked about the medial epicondyle of the humerus. Now we're at the lateral side, so the outside edge. Feeling that, going down into the extensors of the forearm. So opposite again, the flexors, the extensors now. So feeling all of those. And then finally, these insert onto the dorsal, the kind of top of the hand surface of the fingers. So finding that again, kind of feeling that area that we talked about, finding that line, feeling it, knowing kind of where it is in your body, getting a sense for it. All right, so those are our lines of the arm. So now we're going to kind of work with them. We're going to give them a little bit of a stretch, a little bit of an opening, and then some movement to kind of feel them, work through them. And so as you're working through these, they don't separate a ton. You can kind of separate them in some movements, but really we're going to be working on them holistically. So we're going to work on some deep and back specific exercises, but mainly as we're kind of going through these, allowing yourself to feel how the lines can work together to fully integrate your arms into your body so that you kind of have your arm integrated into your front side, your arm integrated into your back side, how they can come together to provide so much support. Let's start with a little bit of this flossing exercise. So having your hands facing out, we're going to start this way. So palms are going to face out. And it's kind of like you're making a goalpost, and then you're going to keep your elbows where they are, and you're going to really reach your arms out. Then you're gonna fold them all the way back in. And as you do this, you can kind of spend as much time on that out as you want, and you'll probably feel a little bit of a pull. It's gonna be different where each person feels it, but the more you reach out, the kind of more up your entire arm, you'll probably start to sense it. I feel it very strongly in my fingers, very strong in my elbow pit, but then I can start to feel it elsewhere. I can start to feel it a little bit more into my shoulder and such if I find a more expansive reach. And so when your palms are facing out like this, you're working with those superficial arm lines. So superficial front arm line, superficial back arm line. So they're working together. They're both kind of getting a little bit of stretch to them. This flossing action is really helpful for fascia because it allows for a gentle stretch with movement. Movement is really helpful for fascia in general. Finding your breath. If it's uncomfortable to be seated, I'm kneeling right now. You can also do this laying on the ground. So again, your arms are in the same place. They're hovering off the ground so that they're not totally relaxed. And then you find that stretch out. Something you can do on the foam roller as well. So there's options for where you can be, but the movement is the same. And that focus on trying to find a further reach is going to be super helpful in feeling it throughout the entire line. So let's take one more, 1.5, depending on where you were at. And then letting that come to a close. Wherever you are, taking your arms down and just feeling kind of the sensation of your arms. They might feel a little bit more energized, might have a little bit more sensation through the entire arm. You might start to sense how the fingers are integrated into the back and into the chest. And then we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it with the deep arm line. So for this one, your elbows are high again, but now your palms are facing down. And so you're trying to keep your kind of shoulders in line with your elbows. They're not too far forward. They're not too far back as well. Just keeping yourself like you're resting on a table. And then it's the exact same action here. So it's a reach out and then a fold back in. So again, this is working with that deep front arm line and the deep back arm line. And so letting yourself kind of just explore this. Maybe this one feels a little bit different. This one's harder for me to sense as much. And part of that reason is, again, because it's deep. So this one has a further inside the body connections than the superficial. But the more I sense this idea of reaching beyond myself, the more I'm able to kind of find and feel that sensation in my body. So again, if your arms are getting tired or you want to try it in a different place, you can do it laying down. If you're laying down, your palms face the wall in front of you. Elbows are hovering off the ground. When I do it on the ground, I'm actually sensing a little bit more of that reach. I feel like I'm able to find it a little bit more. I'm able to feel it a little bit more into my armpit, into my chest, into my back. And I think that this is a pretty cool, just gentle movement that helps you sense those arm lines as well. Helps you feel the integration through a very clear sensation. So let's take one more. And then letting that come to a close. So we're going to go into just a couple stretches, which are going to pinpoint specific parts of the body. So they're probably exercise or stretches you've done in the past, but now you kind of have this focus. Why are we doing this stretch? So we're going to start with just the simple crossing one arm over your body and finding a stretch. When you do this, a lot of the times it's typical that people like to lock back. That's not allowing for the back to actually stretch open. So allow yourself to just kind of feel, move around, find the place where if you kind of pull, you're really feeling that sense of stretching the back out. And you might have to pull the arm in further. You might have to reach it out. I really use my opposite bent arm as leverage here. And just breathing. We're going to spend a little bit more time than you might normally spend in this stretch. This one tends to kind of go up and then go down. So just feeling that gentle reach. And then we'll lower it down, shake it out a little bit, feel the difference side to side, and then cross the other arm in front. So again, trial and error. It's kind of like, okay, where does my arm need to be where I really feel this? And for me, I really have to reach beyond. So that same sensation that I was talking about here, finding that extra little reach helps me find the stretch a little bit more. Helps me open up my back a little bit more. Feeling that in your body, just getting that sense. And then letting that go. Let's do the opposite side of the body. So this one's especially helpful if you have a wall or a door or something where you can reach your hand across it. You're going to put your whole body against it, and then you're going to start to pull away. So stretching kind of that armpit and that pec area. And you kind of can move in and out of it if it's really intense in your body. Kind of similar to that flossing action we were doing there, allowing for a gentle movement. Again, movement is helpful for fascia. So if you incorporate it into your gentle stretching, knowing that you're really supporting that fascia in the process. And take it for just one more moment. And then letting that come to a close on that first side. Moving into your second side. So bring your hand against the wall, shoulder against the wall, and then you peel away. And your hand is about shoulder height. So it's not too low, not too high. You'll kind of feel that place where you get the best stretch. And so just noticing also side to side, like this side is significantly tighter in my body. So this one, that movement feels even better, or I feel I'm actually able to access the stretch rather than tightening up and tensing into other places to do it. So really trying to soften, think about expansion, and letting yourself not just move the tension, but really soften out of tension. So taking that maybe one more time if you're in movement. And then we'll let that come to a close. Finally, we're going to go into a little bit of that hand and forearm, a little bit of stretching there. So again, stretches you might know, pulling your fingers down and a really gentle pull. And as you do this, I want you to actually think about your fingers as being more spread rather than closed together, having a really open surface. If that doesn't feel like enough, you can always set that hand down and pull away from it a little bit. Again, allowing yourself to move in and out of this stretch. And then flipping that wrist over and stretching the other way. Finding that, feeling that, gentle movements associated. Finding the breath. Fascia is a viscous material. So it has properties that are similar to fluid and are similar to solid. They help with shock absorption. So making sure that they're kind of at their most supple and pliable self, that's going to be really helpful. Switching to the other side, same thing. So gentle pull back, releasing it a little bit, just moving back and forth. Again, allowing yourself to choose. Maybe you want to try both with the floor, or maybe it's better with your hand pulling. And sorry, I'm actually going to, I realize I still am sharing my screen. I'm going to stop sharing that so you can get a little bit better view. So letting that kind of move through a little bit there. And then you can let that come to a close. All right, let's go into just a little bit of movement with these arm lines. And so you're going to lay on your back, and we're going to do a little bit of what we know with the arms overhead, hug a tree, and then some movements together. So reaching your arms up towards the ceiling, and then you're going to inhale to reach your arms overhead, and exhale to reach back up. And just moving through that just a few times. We're not going to spend too much time here. But as you're doing this, again, thinking about how your arms are really integrated into your body. They're not just accessories. They might not be part of the axial skeleton. They are part of the body as a whole. Moving that right into hug a tree. So opening your arms out to the side, finding that expansive reach, and then reaching them back together. In my body, I'm getting a little bit more sense of how the muscles are connected from doing those other things. Maybe you're finding that too. Just moving through this exploration and finding how the arms are connected front and back as a whole, how they're reaching into your body, and how they could be even interconnected to each other. We're going to kind of talk about that a little bit more with our next lines. And then finally, you're just going to move your arms in opposition. So one arm will reach down, one arm will reach up. You're going to circle your arms all the way out to the side, back to center, and just one more time in that direction. So finding the expansion of space, feeling those moments where things might change, where things might have to continually reintegrate. And then you're going to double switch so that now you're going in the reverse, rotating all the way around, back through the center. And one more time, all the way around. Double switch. And then bringing your arms down and taking a moment to just be present with that sensation. Feeling the arms. Notice if they're energized or tired, relaxed, receptive. And then rolling yourself all the way up. All right, so we're going to get into the functional lines. The functional lines are maybe a little bit less kind of, there's less to it. So they're going to be kind of nice to end with, little bringing us back into the whole body. So let me bring these up really quick. Actually, let me talk about them first. So the functional lines, as I kind of said before, they're not really used as much with posture. So the other lines that we've talked about in prior workshops were more postural muscles where they really helped with supporting the body. These are going to support the body, but they're going to be more superficial. These are a lot of your really superficial muscles. And the reason that they're especially helpful when working in these lines is for precise and powerful movements. So that shows up a lot in sports, like if you're throwing a baseball, or a football or something, that's going to show up. but it also plays a lot of roles in movement practices like yoga and Pilates. So when you're trying to find this length and you're really trying to find a reach through kind of your extremities and through your center line, through kind of your back, finding all that length and expansion, that's where this is really going to show up. So this is another one that I use a lot in my teaching. When I talk about length, when I talk about distal reach, that's what I'm really kind of referring to. So let me pull these up, and I promise I won't share my screen for as long as time. So these are going to be the functional lines. All right. All right, so here are the functional lines. So we're going to start with the functional back line. So this is the functional back line all the way over to the left. And so this one starts from the shaft of the humerus. So if you lift your arm up and you just find that kind of inside part of the humerus, that's where this one's going to start. It's going to go down through your huge lats, kind of down the side and back of your body into that lumbar dorsal fascia. So down here into this kind of back fascia down your spine and into your sacrum, that bony landmark right there. From your sacrum, it's going to actually cross over your body now and go into the opposite glute. So that huge glute max, that's where it's going to go next. After that, it goes down into the shaft of your femur. So now we're in your thigh, finding that femur, and down into that vastus lateralis, which is going to be your side thigh muscle, right underneath that really big IT band. And then it connects finally onto the tuberosity of the tibia. It's going to be kind of just the top of the tibia, that big shin muscle. So again, finding that for yourself, finding that reach. So I'm doing left to right, finding that left humerus down through that same side of your back, down, crosses over your sacrum into your glute, down the side and connecting into your tibia. So again, kind of feeling that reach, and then you can kind of feel that on the opposite side really quick. Same thing one more time. And that will lead us then into the front functional line. So this one is right here at the bottom. So again, it's going to kind of start from that humeral shaft. So just kind of the middle of the humerus, the body of the humerus. That one goes now into the lats, or no, this one, sorry. I was looking at my wrong one. This one goes into the lower edge of the pec. So kind of following around underneath, goes into that pec. It then goes down into your abdominals. So it's going to go into the ribs first. That's kind of the bony landmark that it's going to touch of those 5th and 6th ribs more precisely. And then it goes down the lateral part of the rectus abdominis. So those rectus abdominis muscles are those kind of 6-pack muscles that you might think of. It goes down the outside of those. It's going to then cross over at the pubic bone. So at that kind of pubic symphysis where they meet, where each side of the pubic bone meets, it's going to cross over there. It's then going to go into your adductor longus, which is one of those inner thigh muscles. And then finally, it's going to connect on the linea aspera. The linea aspera is just another connection point of the femur. So just kind of feeling where that inner thigh feels like it ends. All right, so again, just kind of feeling that for yourself, knowing where it crosses over, feeling it on both sides, feeling how it integrates right and left and upper and lower. Finally, we have one more, and that's going to be ipsilateral. That's going to be same side. And so this one, shaft of the humerus again. So it starts from the arm. This one goes down into that outer edge, that lateral edge of the lats. So, you know, your lats are your back muscles. They kind of go down your side as well. They're going to go down there, and then they're going to come to the kind of the 10 through 12 ribs. So those are really kind of bottom ribs down here. From there, it's going to go through the external obliques. So the external obliques are huge. They go down the outside of your body. And that's going to connect into our ASIS, which is our anterior superior iliac spine, basically the front of that hip. If you feel that hip bone, that's where you're connecting into. From there, this is going to go through our sartorius muscle, which goes from that ASIS all the way down across the thigh. And this is going to finally connect onto the pes anserine and the medial tibial condyle. Basically, you'll just go down to your tibia on the inside edge and find that bony landmark. So just kind of feeling that on the other side, how it kind of crosses over, but it stays on the same side of the body now. And that's going to be your ipsilateral line. All right. So 3 lines there, a little bit faster than the arm lines. Again, more of those superficial muscles, so a little bit easier to kind of feel. Let's go into a little bit of movement, a little bit of stretching with those as well. So for this one, you're going to come onto your back and you're going to find your X shape. So laying back, finding a large X. And we're going to start with that kind of opposition. We're going to use both front side and back side to feel this. But you're going to reach your right arm kind of as far as you can in this stretch place. And then at the same time, reach that left leg. So cross the body, kind of what you need to use to find that oppositional stretch. Let that close. Reaching down the left arm, the right leg, oppositional pull, feeling how it can go through your front body and your back body, and imagining those lines as you do it. Same thing again, right arm, left leg, and letting that close. Left arm, right leg, letting that close. From here, we're going to go into a little bit of reaching them together. So you're going to lift your right arm up and your left leg up. And I'm kind of going from the diagonal to center line, and then I'm reaching them away. And so as you're doing this, you're kind of finding that stability, you're kind of finding that control from opposite sides, reaching across and back down. Finding the opposition of it, finding the reach of the opposite leg and opposite arm as you do this as well. Keeping yourself reaching, opposition. And if it's hard to do with a bent or with a straight leg, you can always bend that leg and then find that long reach more from your knee rather than your toe. So finding that, feeling the kind of power associated, the opposition associated, feeling the front and back. And then once you've evened yourself out, bringing that one to a close. And I'm going to turn on my side for this next one. So let's go into a little bit of that ipsilateral movement. So having yourself laying on your back now. And this is one that, again, you could try out on the foam roller if you have that. Otherwise, you can do it on the mat. And this one's going to be working with that same side. So we know knee folds, we know arms overhead. And so what you do for this one is you just combine them together, feeling that stability and that support from that same side of the body, lowering it down. And with all of these exercises that we're doing, if you do them on your own time, just really kind of playing with feeling, sensing, imagining those lines we've talked about. Where this work kind of comes from is Anatomy Trained. So if you're interested in this, there's a wonderful book that you can check out. There's also different kind of workshops, if you like that as well, where they do actual dissections to look at the fascia. So if that's something you're interested in, knowing that there's kind of options to explore this more. And also, if you don't want to kind of check that out, just knowing that these practices, kind of focusing on the fascia, is going to have such benefits for your body. So that it's not just about the muscles. The muscles are part of it, but they're integrated with that whole body, with that whole connective tissue. Take one more to the left. And then letting that come to a close. We're finally going to end this section with a little bit of a series that I've been doing in my flow class. And the reason that I wanted to do it here is that I really been cueing this idea of reach out through the legs, reach out through the abdominals, reach out through the arms. And that's where this functional alignment really comes into being. If you kind of let yourself slouch and kind of sit back on the sits bones, you're not getting that support from those superficial but really helpful, powerful lengthening lines. So in this place, you're sitting up on top of your sits bones, have your legs slightly bent so you can find more of a powerful reach where you're not stuck, you're not tight, but you can actually find that sensation of legs reaching. Lifting up, finding the help and the support of your obliques, which we talked about, and that rectus abdominis that we talked about. Both of those are going to help provide that sense of length for our body. And then you're going to reach your arms out in front of you. From here, you'll reach your arms up. And as you're doing this, I want you to think about opposition and same side, how both can help contribute to your length. As you press your arms down, you keep that length. This will lead us into a spine stretch where you reach your arms forward, you reach your spine back, and you don't collapse. You keep that idea of length and continuous reach through the legs and through the arms, and you'll stack back up. From here, you'll open your right arm out to the side. We're going into a twist, which makes this reach even harder. But if you keep that idea of reach going, it's going to provide more of a supported twist for your body. Same thing to the left, reaching your arms up, pressing them down, thinking about those fascial lines, sensing them as you're doing this work. Oops, sorry, I forgot our spine stretch, reaching forward and back. Stacking all the way back up, never a moment where you're not lengthening, never a moment where you're not reaching. Opening up, bringing that into a twisted reach, challenges it even more. Finding those oppositional reaches. We're going to take it just one more time to each side. Reaching up, pressing down, opening that right arm up, finding that twist. Forward and back. I again forgot our spine stretch. We'll do it at the center. Coming back, spine stretch moment here. Stacking back up. We'll do that same pattern on this side. As we go to the left one last time. Opening that left arm up, reaching forward and back. Oppositional reach, find the fascia. Have that sense, that imagery in your body, ending with a spine stretch. Length through your body to end. Really feel it, really sense it, and then let that go. All right, so those are our arm lines, those are our functional lines, and that's our fascia workshop for today. So if you have any questions about any of this, you can let me know. But yeah, I hope everybody has a great Saturday.